At the mechanic shop, I heard the technician tell his boss, "Don't fix the brakes completely. He'll be back in a month paying double." I froze behind the stack of tires in the back hallway. My hand was still on the bathroom door handle. Through the thin wall of the office, I could hear them laughing about it. The shop owner's voice was unmistakable. That gravelly smoker's rasp I'd been listening to for the past hour while he explained why my wife's car needed $2,000 in repairs. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out slowly, opened the voice recorder, and pressed the red button. The timestamp read 3:42 p.m. I'd brought my wife's Camry in that morning because the brakes felt soft. Nothing major. Just wanted peace of mind before she drove our kids to her mother's house 3 hours away. The owner, a guy named Frank who'd been running the shop for 15 years, had walked me through a nightmare list of problems. Rotors warped, pads worn to nothing, brake lines corroding, calipers seized. He showed me pictures on his phone of parts that looked destroyed. I didn't know enough about cars to argue. I just handed over my credit card and told him to fix everything. Now I was hearing him explain to his technician exactly how much to leave unfixed. The technician's voice came through clearly on my recording. "Same as the Volvo last week?" Frank laughed again. "Exactly. Grind down the pads just enough that they'll squeal in 3 weeks. Customer comes back thinking something new is wrong. We charge them for the full job again. They never check the old parts." I felt my stomach drop. My wife, my kids, 3 hours on the highway with brakes that were designed to fail. I kept recording as Frank continued his masterclass in automotive fraud. He mentioned other customers by name, talked about a woman whose power steering he'd sabotaged, bragged about an elderly man he'd been milking for fake repairs for 2 years. I stayed hidden for 6 more minutes, capturing everything. Frank's voice grew more confident as he detailed his system. He kept meticulous records of which customers were easy marks, widows, single mothers, anyone who seemed like they didn't know cars. He called them repeat revenue. The technician asked what happened if someone got hurt. Frank's response made my blood run cold. "Insurance, that's what it's for. Besides, nobody's died yet." He said yet. Like it was just a matter of time and he'd already made peace with it. I saved the recording and walked back to the waiting room like nothing happened. Frank came out 10 minutes later with a smile and my keys. I paid the full amount without arguing, signed the receipt, shook his hand. My skin crawled touching him, but I needed to play this perfectly. I drove straight to another mechanic across town, a shop my brother-in-law had used for years. I explained what I'd heard and asked him to document everything. He put the car on the lift and called me over within 5 minutes. The brake pads he pulled off were practically new. The rotors showed no warping. The calipers worked perfectly. Nothing Frank had described was actually wrong with the car. But here's what was wrong. The brake lines had been loosened. Not enough to fail immediately, just enough to leak slowly over time. Over a 3-hour highway drive with my family inside. I filed a police report that afternoon, handed over my recording, my receipt, and the written assessment from the honest mechanic. The detective's face changed as he listened to Frank describe his system. He made 3 phone calls before I left the station. By the next morning, investigators had pulled Frank's customer records and cross-referenced them with accident reports from the past 5 years. They found patterns. Customers who'd had work done at Frank's shop and then experienced brake failures, steering problems, engine fires. One woman had been rear-ended when her brakes gave out at a stoplight. An elderly man had rolled his truck into a ditch. Both had been Frank's customers within weeks of their accidents. The raid happened 4 days later. I watched from across the street as officers walked Frank out in handcuffs. The technician followed right behind him. They seized computers, customer files, and boxes of fraudulent repair records. The local news showed up 20 minutes later. By that evening, Frank's face was on every channel. Former customers started calling the police tip line. The story grew bigger with every victim who came forward. Families who'd lost loved ones in accidents that suddenly made sense. Insurance companies who'd paid out claims for failures that weren't accidents at all. The district attorney added charges daily as the investigation expanded. Frank is currently awaiting trial on 43 counts of fraud, reckless endangerment, and attempted vehicular assault. His shop was permanently shut down, and his license was revoked in 3 states.